Pokémon Legends Arceus has been upon us for a little while now, and the game's fresh approach has gotten casual and hardcore fans alike excited. And as a content creator, it really does feel like a privilege to be able to make these videos for you guys, and be a part of it all whenever there's a new release in the series. It's a good time to be a fan right now. But now that the game has been out for a little while, one can't help but try to think of what is similar and what's different with previous games in the series. And one of those things are Pokémon evolutions. In the core series of Pokémon games that we all know and love, there's no denying that while Pokémon evolving can be a bit tedious at times, especially if you're more of a casual player trying to get a Pokémon like Dragonite in one of the earlier generations. In Pokémon Legends Arceus, however, evolving your Pokémon feels overall smoother. Now, there's definitely a part of me that wonders if that's partly because the game feels fresh and new. But even with that, I think most would agree that the process just feels easier. That does get me thinking though. What about Legends Arceus? Which are the Pokémon that feel uniquely more difficult within the context of that game? While playing, there are definitely a few that will stick out among the others, just like with the core games. So that's why today, I've decided to look at the 7 hardest Pokemon to evolve in Pokémon Legends Arceus. Though bear in mind, these 7 are not in any particular order. Why in no particular order? Because I felt like it. Anyways, let's get into it. The first I'd like to bring up are Overquill and Wardier. And yes, I'm counting them as a single entry. This is also a good time to also bring up that when I say hardest to evolve, I'm also factoring tediousness and in-game vagueness, particularly because the game is still fairly new. These two Pokemon have a pretty strange method of evolution. Overquill evolves from a Hisuian Quillfish, requiring the player to use the strong style version of Barb Barrage at least 20 times. And Wardier is similar, requiring the use of the agile style of Psy-Shield Bash at least 20 times. This sounds simple enough, right? Well, as far as I've been able to see, the game never clearly tells you this. It does try to give you little hints through the tasks in the decks, but it's still never clear enough for some players to knowingly evolve these two on purpose. The act itself isn't anything crazy, it's just figuring it out that's definitely a little weird. It's nice that the game is having more to evolutions than just leveling up and other more typically known methods like stones. But if you don't know how to go about evolving these two and aren't trying to use a guide, it can be a serious problem trying to figure out how this works, especially if you're trying to do one of the side quests that requires you to obtain one of these, like the Sea Legends quest. The next on this list is Garchomp. I don't want to spend too much time on this one because there's nothing actually too unique about why Garchomp is on the list. One reason is the level 48 requirement, which isn't new, but the fact is that you don't get Gible until a little later in the game, which of course means it'll be significantly underleveled compared to the rest of your team at the point in the game. That means if you want to add the full evolution line to the dex, you're likely going to evolve it specifically from Gible, which, like a lot of pseudo-legendaries, is typically really tedious. Not to mention, Arceus has fewer battles than usual in favor of exploration and catching Pokemon. So the meta of the game, so to speak, can make the grind feel just a bit more monotonous than it maybe would have been otherwise, even with the automatic experience share. Then there's the evolutions. Most of you watching this surely understand how these typically work, and it hasn't actually changed much in Legends Arceus. When it comes to the stone evolutions, it will depend on your method of acquisition. If you're just trying to discover one, then it's just a bit random. You'll have to get pretty lucky to find the stone you want, but it's not too terrible. You can also purchase them for merit points, but they're not cheap. But still, regardless of how much time it may take you, it's nothing too crazy, yeah? Well, there's one other reason I felt like putting evolutions here. Sylveon. You're probably thinking, wait, Sylveon? Isn't that the closest thing to Eevee's default evolution in this game? And yes, you're right. If you just level Eevee up and don't make a specific alteration to its moveset, it will eventually just evolve into Sylveon. You see, in Gen 8, they had changed Sylveon's method of evolution. It's not specifically based on the affection system anymore, and is based on friendship, just like Espeon and Umbreon. When your friendship is high enough and Eevee has a Fairy-type move, it will evolve into Sylveon, and Eevee will naturally learn a Fairy-type move early on. Now, if you know this is no problem. But if you didn't play Sword and Shield, you probably aren't going to know this. And it's another one of those things the game isn't going to make clear to you. I was hesitating on putting this on the list, but I noticed just how many players were having this happen to them by accident while trying to get Espeon or Umbreon. It seems like a common beginner's trap. In fact, of all the Pokemon evolution subjects on this list, this of all things was what I found the most posts about, as far as evolutions confusing players. Maybe it's because Arceus brought back a lot of players that were on a hiatus from the core games or something like that. Oh, and on top of all of that, some people also weren't sure how to change or remove Pokemon moves, as the game also was perhaps just not direct enough about it for some players. I'd love to see the physical reaction of someone that didn't know about the Sylveon change, expecting your cool Umbreon to make its grand debut in the dark of night, and then suddenly being greeted by a smiling, dapper Sylveon staring you in the face. The next evolution I'd like to bring to attention is Porygon Z. This one is both rather time-consuming and random, and I think anyone trying to get this evolution line knew this was going to be on the list. First, to catch the base Porygon, you need to be able to find a space-time distortion in the Crimson Mirelands. So there's already a bit of luck here in needing to be able to run into one of these distortions and be able to find and catch Porygon. It does make sense that Porygon is handled this way though, as Porygon shouldn't exist in this time period. It makes for a fun reason to include this Pokemon in the game. And quite frankly, once you catch Porygon, the rest is not that bad. The dubious disc and upgrade items required for the evolutions are also found in distortions, but you do have the option to obtain these items with merit points at least. So if you're not getting lucky with these items, I hope you saved up those points. Well, I probably made it sound like I don't like the effort it takes to catch and evolve this evolution line. I do think it makes Porygon feel special in a game like this, as it should, as it's probably the most out of place creature in the entire game. Alright, you want to talk about feeling grindy? Then we have to mention Gudra. Gudra is another dragon type that's known for taking a bit of time to actually obtain. You need to get your Sliggoo to level 50, so it's a bit similar to the situation with fellow dragon type Garchomp. I think the fact that Goomy just needs to hit level 40 to evolve into Sliggoo in the first place is actually the worst aspect of this. It's just not a terribly strong Pokemon for how long it goes without going into its second form, and certainly a far cry from its final form. Then there's the final requirement to evolve in the Gudra itself. It has to hit at least level 50 in the rain. This isn't a new mechanic for this Pokemon, but it feels like it's even more of a chore in Arceus to get rain to show up. But that could just be me. Sleeping over and over and over to reset the area to try to get it to start raining in an area is really lame. That being said, there is an alternate way to get Gudra that I'm not factoring in too much when putting it in this list. If you can eventually get the alpha version of the Hisuian Sliggoo, you can straight away get it to evolve the Gudra as long as it's leveled in the rain. You just need to actually find and catch an alpha Sliggoo. But even then, we're talking about going from Goomy to Gudra here. Pokémon Legends Arceus introduced a new obtainable Pokémon for Generation 8, Basco Legion. And with that introduction comes a pretty weird requirement for its evolution. In Legends Arceus, Basculin got a new white stripe color variant, and this is the variant that can evolve into Basculegion. And the method requirement for its evolution is something that I'm not sure anyone would directly figure out. I believe something in the Pokédex may hint at it slightly, but the requirement is still so unexpected. Seriously, like, listen to this. In order to get your white-striped Basculin to evolve into Basculegion, your Basculin needs to take at least 294 recoil damage, and any damage that's taken that caused the Pokemon to faint will not count. Imagine just catching one of these and never realizing anything about this, and deciding to avoid using moves that cause recoil in your playthrough. Not to mention that it's not uncommon for players to get one at, say, level 25. You're not getting much recoil damage at that level. And again, battles in Legends Arceus aren't always super frequent, so it could take longer than you'd like if just playing normally. Again, this isn't exactly hard, but with the game being new, it's definitely going to throw certain players off for a while if they don't specifically look into it. It makes you wonder how many people have a Basculegion without even realizing how it even evolved in the first place. Even though this list isn't ordered, I'd like to think I saved the most difficult one for last, Ursaluna. Once again, the context of the game does add to this being as difficult as it is. But even without that, it's an evolution that requires an item that can't actually be purchased, the Peat Block. A previous entry that perhaps also felt a bit convoluted, Porygon Z, at least has items that you can purchase with merit points. But you really do need to go out and either find a peat rock out in the wild or discover the quest where the player can be rewarded the item to obtain an Ursaluna. But there's also the fact that you may just not know that you even need this for this evolution. Or in another case, you might actually find a peat block but have no idea what it's for. You see, you can't just use the peat block on your Ursaring and expect it to evolve into an Ursaluna. It doesn't work that way. You need to specifically use it on a full moon. There aren't really enough clues in the game that I know of to let players know how this works, and I've seen quite a few people around asking about how this even works, especially on the first week of the game's release. You need to keep going back to sleep over and over to move the moon cycle along, and keep checking the moon in the sky to make sure you're on the right phase to use that. You can also just not check the sky and instead continue to monitor if the peat block is compatible with the Ursaring in your party every night. But where's the fun in that? I just can't believe how many people I've seen ask, why isn't my peat block working? Due to not knowing or understanding the full moon requirement. The method is still interesting for what it is, and some players will probably find it satisfying to finally pull it off. But there's definitely some barriers to both figuring it out and actually getting it done. Well, that's my list for the 7 hardest Pokemon to evolve in Pokémon Legends Arceus. Even though I brought up how grindy some of this can be, I still think most of this can still be fun if you simply enjoy playing the game. But what does your list look like compared to mine? Which Pokemon have been the roughest for you to evolve? Any unique experiences? Let me know in the comments. I haven't been able to get enough of seeing people talk about this game. It's exciting times. Anywho though, thanks for watching, and stick around for even more Legends Arceus content coming your way. Hey guys, thank you for enjoying another Mystic Umbreon video. It's exciting times for the Pokemon franchise, and I look forward to the coming months where it just keeps getting better. If you guys are wanting some more bite-sized Mystic Umbreon content, please check out my TikTok, where I upload daily, as well as the Mystic Umbreon Shorts channel. If y'all enjoyed the video and want to see more content like this, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Be sure to leave a comment too. It really helps us out. I think it's time to wrap this up though. I'm Mystic Umbreon, and I'll see you next time with some more amazing Pokemon content.